welcome to Rotary. Also, welcome to Kansas Summer Part 2. Although I think it's supposed to be nicer next week, but the last day has been usually warm. We will go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by several announcements. So let me get my flag up and going the right direction. And if you'll unmute for the moment, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. More or less.
Thank you very much. And now if we could have you mute so we don't have any background noise creeping in like phone calls and dog barks and the like. Several announcements. Last week's meeting, of course, was in person at Kay's Garden. I would appreciate it, and I mentioned it in yesterday's email, that we would like feedback, particularly those who attended via Zoom. Did it go well? What could we do better? What can we do differently? The district conference for our District 5710 is coming up on Saturday, November 7th. And it is in town here, so that'll make it convenient. Of course, it's generally in the hometown of the district governor, and of course, our district governor right now is Farron Barr from the South Club, and it will take place at the Capitol Plaza Hotel. This year, it is a one-day only event with seminars and the like during the day, and then there'll be a banquet in the evening. The South Club is having its pumpkin run again this year. It is a virtual event, and I will refer you back to my email yesterday for the link to the registration and additional information about the pumpkin run. Incidentally, I have a link, I think, to register for the district conferences if you're interested. It was also in yesterday's email. Our next Rotary Cubed meeting, and Cubed is the name we have given to the group of the Rotary Club of Harlem, the Rotary Club of Minneapolis, and the Rotary Club of Topeka, and I think some of the others may be joining in. That next meeting is going to be October 15th. The subject is going to be voter rights. And there's going to be an invitation, if it's not already happened, going out to the entire district. So we may well have a fairly large number of people attending, and I think attendance is capped at 100 people. A reminder again, and I keep plugging it shamelessly, because I'm so happy that we'll have a home at the zoo, and the zoo has been so accommodating. They're doing their fall fundraiser right now. I had a link in yesterday's email. So if you want to bid on any of the prizes, that's one link. If you want to watch the live event, which is this coming Saturday, there is another link in that email. I think that concludes my announcement. So I'm going to turn it over to Joni, and Joni is going to introduce today's speaker.
Thanks, Dan. I am thrilled to introduce Pat Doran to you. Many of you already know him. His reputation precedes him as Executive Vice President, Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer, and General Counsel. And when he's not doing that, he was previously Chair of Momentum 2022. I don't know if that has any relationship at all to Vince deciding to retire this year. Perhaps Pat can give us a little bit of perspective on that. And he did a lot in terms of Heartland Visioning, NOTO, and just an all-around contributor to our community, and we're so very grateful to have you with us this afternoon, Pat, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Joni.
Pat, I'll start your video if you like.
Yeah, just let me share that this is a video that the Greater Topeka Partnership asked me to do back in May, and I thought it would be, nice to kind of look at that and reflect on where we've come since that time. So yeah, please get it going.
Steve, we're not getting it yet. I heard a little bit of sound. And Steve, you're muted, so I can't hear you.
Thanks. I practiced 3 times. Make sure that worked. Let me try again. Is it coming up now?
Yes.
All right, here we go. How's that?
Looks good.
Good morning, Topeka. Pat Doran here with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka. For all you moms out there, a belated Happy Mother's Day, and for the rest of the city, Happy Monday. It's hard to believe. 16 years ago, May 1st, I moved my family here to this thriving metropolis called Topeka. And what I'd like to do is just take a little bit of time and talk about that concept of thriving. Now during this time of COVID, and then into the future as we move forward. So, what does it mean to thrive during the time of COVID? Well, what I found is it's about connection. We're isolated, and the way you overcome that is to stay connected, to communicate. Throughout this time, I've been sharing a Friday inspiration to everybody at the Federal Home Loan Bank in an effort to make them feel like we're together as one. It's also important, though, to be vulnerable. There's been so many emotions that have come up in us during this time, whether it's grief or that feeling of isolation, and we've overcome that by being vulnerable and talking to each other. But another great thing that's happened from this is an emphasis on home. It's been a stay-at-home order, but home is where your heart is with the most important people. And we've spent time with them, whether it's in a physical location or here in our community, and we remember that importance of home. We've also been a time to remember about great leaders. Matt Pavarnik, Mayor Michelle, Cody Foster, Reverend Hicks, people that have lifted us up, that have held us in their hands. But we've also been reminded of superheroes, the doctors, the first responders, the people that work in fast food, the construction workers. They have been the real superheroes during this time. And last, we've got to remember that, like in so many ways, the poor have been disproportionately impacted by this. And let's remember that and especially lift them up as we go forward. So what does this mean to then thrive as we get past this period of time? Well, I believe any period of challenge presents an opportunity. This is a time of change, but that's also a time of opportunity. And it gives us the chance to come out stronger. It gives us the chance to come out more together. We've had a lot of creativity released in the last couple of years, but we can do more. More creativity, more innovation. We need to seize these opportunities, take the great things that started here in Topeka and multiply them and do even more. And I'm convinced that each one of us takes advantage of that opportunity will be even better than we thought was possible going into this crisis. So I'll end with the motto that we've adopted at the Federal Home Loan Bank. Together, we will. Stay safe, stay strong, stay connected.
Well, I want to start by thanking Joni for suggesting I'm a bigger cheese than I am. I was never the chair of Momentum 2022. I did have the privilege to serve on the formative board and then to chair a work group where I interacted with Vince and others because my work group was concentrating on how we continued to build on all the great things happening in downtown and Noto. So have been involved, but I don't want to take anyone else's place. And Joni didn't get into it, but a lot of what she was sharing as of the moment has been past tense. Last year was a year that I never saw coming. I fought a battle with cancer and have come out the other side of it. But I just stepped back when I was kind of blindsided by that and haven't yet re-engaged because a portion of my treatment continues on into next year. But when something like that hits you, if you're aware, if you're vulnerable at all, it impacts your priorities and it changes your thinking. And some of that was reflected in that video that we shared. Even though my good buddy Matt Pavarnik, likes to refer to me as a great optimist, as an old-fashioned general counsel of a corporation, I can certainly be a little glasses half empty versus glasses half full. But when a big thing like that smacks you side the head, it does make you realize nothing really good is going to come from being that pessimist all the time. You'll be a lot happier person as an optimist, but there certainly is a role for both in this world. But when I put that together, I was, reflecting on where I was, at that time, like I assume most of you back in May. My emotions had gone through a huge cycle in a short period of time. I had feelings of being stir crazy, of being frustrated by interacting with everyone through a computer. I like to wave my hands and respond to people's facial and other gestures, and you can do that on a computer, but it's nothing close to one-on-one. So I was doing a lot of introspection, trying to figure out what all this meant, and part of that introspective I shared in that video. You could say this is an awful crisis, and I'm not minimizing it, but it has also revealed some tremendous opportunities and reinforced so many good things that are happening in this town, in this state, in this nation, and in the world. So what do I mean by that? Whether I'm working here at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka or we're interacting with each other in this town, or if you take it even broader to the state, each of those places has their own culture, and culture isn't something that just exists. It's something that's made, and it's made by people that do things. And I'm a believer, as a manager in a corporation, that there are some preferred ways to build a culture. And one is to have a group of people that feel safe. COVID at times, especially at the beginning, made us feel unsafe, unmoored, I've heard. But this was not a time to feed into that. This was a time to try to connect with each other, and through jointly sharing, to build back safety or enhance safety going forward. And I also believe you build a strong culture through being vulnerable. I'm a very imperfect person. All of us, have opportunities for improvement. All of us have opportunities to take risks together. And, when we embrace that infallibility, it furthers that connectedness and that safety as a group. And then when you take that safety and that vulnerability and you add it to, hopefully a great leader with a purpose, and I mentioned some of those leaders, in that video, Matt Pavarnik, the guy I'm looking at right now, Vince Fry, Cody Foster, other leaders in this community, they give you that purpose. And when you put all those things together, great things happen, whether it's in a business or a city or a state or even more. So, I transitioned in that video to saying, well, if we kind of accept where we are and try to not allow the crisis to pull us apart, but to bring us further together, all of this change might not be something we look back on and regret. It might be something that we embrace, because it gives us an opportunity to build on something that could be viewed as a negative, but I guess I choose to view it as a positive. And I'm going to start bigger than Topeka, but I'll try to narrow it down. In many ways, COVID has thrown fire on things that were already starting before COVID ever came along. I mentioned one in the video, the inequality, the fact that, this COVID has disproportionately impacted the poor and certain races. And it is bluntly allowing, in many instances, the rich to get richer and others just to kind of stay in place. Well, all that does is just increase the gap between the two. And there was racial unrest long before COVID. But, we threw some gas on that fire through circumstances none of us anticipated, and it sort of, exploded. And, there's been tensions in political parties for eons. There's a day when people in Congress used to have duels where they shot each other, over stupid things. But, what was going on leading into this has just been, enhanced by COVID. So there was a type of change in the mix. We threw some gas on it, and I say, let's seize the day. Let's take advantage of that change that started, that ball that's rolling down the hill, and say, yeah, let's try to change the ship on inequality. Let's try to change the ship on racial justice. Let's try to be more respectful of Mother Nature. And that's what I hope is going to come out of, this unprecedented, difficult time. And, you take it down to Topeka, I believe that same concept's going to apply here. We get through this and we're going to jump on to that change train, that had started long before COVID, and continue to build this, great community that it's already here, but all of us desire to make better. So I guess that's my message regarding the video. Joni didn't ask me to, also share, what's going on at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka, but as one of the larger employers in town, I just thought I'd share a little bit. We've taken this crisis seriously. Our number one priority has been protecting the health and well-being of our employees. We refer to them as business partners. And like other places, we overnight, went from all working in this beautiful office where I'm sitting right now to basements and kitchen tables and other locations. And we fortunately didn't miss a beat. We kept serving our customers and doing a good job. I'm not saying it's always been as efficient. It can't be when you just turn things upside down that quickly. But we have just been so impressed by the resiliency shown by our workforce. And, from day one, we've been asking, okay, how can we later safely return to the office? So we've had a group called our Pandemic Planning Working Group that's been, charting that path from the very beginning. Initially, we thought the path was we wouldn't return to work until the first of next year. And we, were influenced to be there because, the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka is part of a Federal Home Loan Bank system. And there are 10 sister banks in much bigger metropolises than Topeka. And most of those banks, are still committed to not returning their workforce to January 1 for some reasons that aren't as much in play here. The majority of the New York workforce needs to take public transportation to get to work every day. Our workforce is not as dependent on that. Same thing, out in San Francisco, but, then Mother Nature has thrown them a huge curve where, the air quality is so awful. They're sheltering in place, for both COVID and air quality. So, there's a different, transportation issue for Topeka versus other places. We're blessed to have this building. We've added, safety features to it, from an enhanced air filtration system to a temperature check system that everyone, must, have their temperature taken, and you're seen on a video every day when you walk into the building. All of the CDC recommended protocols, social distancing, mask wearing. And, as I mentioned to a few of you up front, this is my first week back into the office, since March 16. On Friday of last week, as I was approaching this point, I was scared. I was scared, because I'd gone through that cancer treatment and I'm still going through a portion of it right now. I was wondering if it was, in my best interest, but I had volunteered to go back. We have not asked anyone to go back to the office. It's only been volunteers. And, I I came in on Monday, and I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know if it's possible, but I feel safer here than I did in my home, just because of all the protocols and this place is huge. We're so lucky. There's only a quarter of us here right now. So, when you have all this space for a quarter of our workforce, you can spread people out pretty effectively. So, we're now not expecting any more than half the workforce to return to the office by the end of the year. And then what happens after that is like so many other organizations. It's dependent on what a vaccine looks like and, whether or not there's a second wave and all those things that we hear about. Now, as a business, and I believe you've heard some other people from the Federal Home Loan Bank speak to you before. It's a challenging time. We are a wholesale lender. That means we loan money to banks and credit unions and savings and loans and insurance company throughout 4 states: Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Nebraska. Most of our customers do not need us right now. Most of our customers are just awash with deposits, the proceeds from PPP loans, and excess liquidity because lending has declined, other than those PPP loans. So our outstanding loans has kind of dropped along with the slowdown of the economy. We were designed to ebb and flow, so we will be fine through this. But it's not something we predicted going into this year. No one predicted this pandemic. We didn't predict interest rates going this low again. We didn't predict the decline in demand. But again, the Federal Home Loan Bank is designed to be cyclical, so we'll be fine. But it is a different environment than we anticipated. But we're going to weather it just fine. So that's just a little update on the organization I'm fortunate enough to work for. I'm happy to answer any questions or do whatever is normal, after someone spouts off for a little bit like me.
And anybody that has a question, just unmute and go ahead and ask Pat, please.
Pat, this is Anita Walgast, and I think you may be aware I'm a supporter of the arts. Soon after you opened, one of your employees couldn't wait to take me through the building, and what you have done promoting Kansas artists is phenomenal. And of course, they're all hurting, just like everybody else is hurting now. But they know that their work has been represented there and that you support the arts. And we really appreciate that and everything you do for the community.
Anita, that's very kind of you to recognize that. I am fortunate to walk by all this local art each day, and yes, it was a conscious decision to make sure that the art in this building would come from local artists. And you're right, there are so many people hurting, and certainly artists are there. But again, thank you for recognizing it, and I hope the people that haven't seen it get the opportunity once this is all passed to stop by sometime.
Hi, Pat. This is Glenda DuBois.
Hi, Glenda.
And I guess it's going to be a thank you, Pat, kind of a moment now, right? Something he doesn't want to go through. But you know what? It is just so good to see you. And to thank you for sharing your journey, but then also sharing the journey of how that will inspire others as we all go through this together. But we do appreciate you. We appreciate Federal Home Loan Bank and what you've done and what we really look forward to as the future of what things will be. And so many of us like you are trying to really look at this as positive as possible and just move forward. So good to see you, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Glenda. I mentioned in that video, I'm a transplant to this town. And it's really been touching how, me, my family have been embraced by this community. And, had the opportunity to meet awesome folks like Glenda. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing you too.
Well, this is Joni, Pat, and I am not going to thank you. I'm going to have an ask, and that is that the Rotary Club of Topeka is over 100 years old, and we are very grateful for Federal Home Loan Bank and its many employees, but we don't have a member from your bank. And so I'm going to ask you for either you or one or more of your employees to become a Rotary Club of Topeka member.
Joni, let me see what I can do.
Joni is our top recruiter, or one of the top. So thank you, Joni. And yes, we would love to have somebody from the bank join our club. We would greatly appreciate that. Do we have other questions or comments?
Well, this is Vince. It's great to see Pat. He's an inspiration. Pat, I think it might be an interesting story, briefly, to talk about how the Federal Home Loan Bank happens to be in Topeka. You mentioned New York, San Francisco, large markets. How did the bank wind up in Topeka, Kansas?
Thanks for the question, Vince. And he knows that I'll answer it because, we've discussed the story before. But for Herbert Hoover, having as his vice president Charles Curtis, a native son of Topeka, there would not be a Federal Home Loan Bank in Topeka. Back in 1932, when we were trying to pull ourselves out of the Depression, one of the things that was pulling down the nation was people were either losing their homes or they were losing their ability to make payments on their homes, and what was enhancing that situation was the type of lending at the time. Back at that time, a mortgage loan was a 3 or 5 year balloon loan. So, whatever the amount you paid for the house, in 3 or 5 years, you had to pay it all off. And, if that happened to come along during the Depression, people were suddenly out of their homes. So President Hoover came up with the great idea, let's figure out a way to extend the term of mortgage loans and change them from a balloon payment loan to an amortizing loan. So, you could pay it off over time in smaller amounts. And the Federal Home Loan Bank system was created to allow that to happen. So, we were created to, take money that we would obtain by selling, securities, to wealthy people, to, pension funds, to companies. Eventually, over time, it's become sovereign wealth funds in China and other places. But to take this money that we would borrow and then loan it to, at the time, building and loan corporations. That was the precursor to the savings and loans that we have today, and then allow those buildings and loans to make those longer term mortgage loans to people during the Depression. When the legislation was going through Congress, you may recall that the vice president is technically the president of the Senate. And at that time, the vice president played a much more active role in running the Senate and in passing legislation. Charles Curtis basically said, if we're going to pass this bill, one of the banks is going to be in my hometown of Topeka, Kansas. So that's what happened. And initially, there were federal home loan banks in cities closer to Topeka, but still generally larger. There started out being one in Little Rock, Arkansas, that eventually moved to Dallas, Texas. There started out being one in Portland, Oregon, back when Portland was a small town, that eventually moved to San Francisco. So there's been movement over time from smaller to bigger cities. The sole exception is the Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka. This was our home, and we've continued to make it our home. And yeah, it's because of that person, Charles Curtis, that was looking out for his hometown. So yeah, it's been a great run and a great thing for us in Topeka. Thanks for asking, Vince.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Going once, twice?
Stan, I'll step in. Being a Topeka South Rotarian and stuff. I had the opportunity to work with Pat through Heartland Visioning and through Momentum 2022, and value his friendship and his leadership. And it was good to see you out and about, Pat.
Thank you, Roger. And I wasn't planning this. There are some unexpected friends that come along in this life, and Roger happens to be one. When I was diagnosed with cancer, Roger was just continually there for me. And there's some people that know to send out that text or that call, and he's that kind of a guy. So, Joni, you're married to one of the best.
I call him my bonus.
You're +1. Good.
Well, thank you everybody for the questions, comments. Pat, thank you. Great food for thought. Also a nice little history lesson. I'm becoming a history buff, and I learned a little bit more about why the bank is here, so I appreciate that. I do want to go ahead. In one announcement I did mention earlier, we will be having a live meeting again on November 5th. Ann Palmer, our club member, will be the speaker. And just on a personal note, I am still as bullish on Topeka as I have ever been, including pre-COVID and where I am now, because I think great things are happening, and it's people like Pat and Vince and many others who have done so many good things for this city. Our next week's meeting is to be determined, so we got to line up somebody. And with that, and I rushed through the meeting last week because we were over time, so I did not do the 4-way test, so we are going to do it right now. And if you'll unmute and join me, and I'll kick it off with of the things we think, say, or do. Is it true? Is it fair
to all concerned?
Will it
build goodwill and friendships?
Will it
be beneficial to all concerned? And will it be fun?
Will it be fun?
And
yes.
Is it fair?
And is it kind?
There we go. Joni made it to the 6-way test. So everybody have a great week, and we will see you next week.
Very good.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.